What's with that tattered, cheap thing? Poor people should just go home. Betty, with her wealth, seemed to think everything I wore looked shabby. She pinched the fabric of my dress as if handling something filthy. Then she took out a glass I had given her as a keepsake and poured beer into it. If you don't want to go home, could you please change into something else? I'll pay for the damages. With that, Betty threw the beer she had poured right at me. A yellow splash danced in the air, drenching my dress. What are you doing? Why are you upset? It's just a cheap thing. It doesn't matter if it gets dirty. Come on, hurry up and buy some new clothes. $5,000 should be enough, right? Betty laughed loudly, seeming to enjoy herself. I couldn't stand it. This dress was practically a memento left by my late mother. To have it dirty just because it's cheap? You've done something terrible. Huh? I said I would pay for it. She didn't know yet what a mess she'd be in after this. My name is Karen. I'm a working housewife. I had a smooth married life with my husband, whom I'd met at college in my 20s. Life with him was always peaceful. A few years later, our son John was born, and I thought we would live happily ever after as a family of 3. But when John turned 4, my husband was found to have cancer. Pancreatic cancer. It was hard to detect until the symptoms appeared, and by the time we went to the hospital, it was already stage 4 terminal cancer. Despite the fight, my husband passed away a year later. The life I thought would continue had crumbled away so easily. I wondered if I could really raise a child on my own. But even without my husband, John grew up strong and healthy. Watching John always surrounded by friends and laughing brightly, I felt encouraged. I had to make this child happy. I was determined. When I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor. Oh, that's wonderful, John. You're smart and kind. You'll definitely be able to do it. If I become a doctor, I can help people suffering from illnesses like Dad, right? John said with a slightly lonely smile. I never imagined I'd listen to a child's dream with such a heavy heart. You can save them, definitely. In my heart, I told my husband how strong his son was growing up. Losing my husband wasn't just a painful event. Seeing John trying to live positively made me realize I had to live earnestly too. John grew up healthy, and after intense studying, he went on to medical school and became a doctor, truly. I'll never forget the thrill when he passed the national exam. John, now in his 40s, continues to work as an active doctor. 2 years ago, my son got married. I was worried that he might remain single forever because he was always busy working. But he finally found someone he wanted to share his life with, and I was overjoyed when he told me about his marriage. However, my relationship with Betty, John's wife, wasn't very good. Betty comes from a wealthy family. Her parents work in the city bank, and her grandfather is a bank president. A family of elites I'd never normally associate with. Betty met John at a party, and they married quickly after a year of dating. To be honest, I was worried because John, who was raised in a very ordinary family, might not match up socially. My son is a doctor and has savings, but I wasn't sure if he made enough to meet Betty's expectations. But I couldn't help but see myself and my husband in them. Family background has nothing to do with happiness. If they need each other, then I should support them, so I watched their marriage unfold. However, Betty started to show her true colors after getting married. Perhaps because she was raised in a wealthy family, she seemed to be very selfish, getting angry over everything that didn't go her way. She probably grew up in an environment where she was listened to about everything. Moreover, Betty had a fixation on draping herself in luxury brands from head to toe. To be honest, John and I didn't really see the appeal. Betty was free-spirited, in a bad way. She once even insisted John take a day off work to go shopping with her. My son was at his wits' end, but the values of a couple should be adjusted between them. I thought the best I could do was to watch over them without interfering too much. But after John's study abroad was decided, Betty's behavior escalated. It's only been 2 years since they married, and it must be hard for her to live without her husband. I tried to at least support her, visiting her home to check in. One day, I brought cookies over to Betty, and Betty laughed through her nose. "What's with these tasteless cookies? I'm not eating this," and tossed the cookies aside. "Betty, that's too much, even if you don't like them." "It's because your taste is outdated, right? I don't want to eat something so poor. Besides, Karen, everything about you is cheap, from your face to what you wear." Betty said that without a hint of regret, laughing. I was shocked. Having wanted to get along, I never imagined my son's wife would talk to me that way. Furthermore, the source of Betty's stress didn't seem to be John's study abroad. "I can't even go shopping without John. There's no one to carry my bags." It seems Betty treats John like a servant at home. Unlike John, who works as a doctor, Betty holds the title of executive director at a city bank. But it seems to be a title in name only, as she doesn't seem to be working when she goes in. "It's all because John is too lenient. You give him money and spoil him, so the money I can spend freely decreases, and the allowance I get from my parents isn't that much either." Moreover, she seems to be claiming John's earnings as her own. It may be natural for a couple to share, but as she's almost like a housewife, she needs to be careful with how she spends money. "I work from home for a reason. I'm not without earnings, and I'm not taking money from John." "Whether that's true is questionable, right? Aren't you secretly taking it?" Every time I say something, Betty complains like this. She thinks the reason she has less money to spend is because I'm receiving support from John. But I am managing my own expenses on my own. Instead of getting closer to Betty, she used me as an outlet for her stress. In the midst of this, she gave me an unexpected invitation. "Karen, we're having a gathering for Christmas with relatives and coworkers. Would you like to join?" I was surprised. Betty herself inviting me to an important event? "Are you inviting me as well as John?" "Since it's a special party, make sure you dress appropriately, okay? If we have any shabby-looking relatives, it would be embarrassing for me." I feel like that was an unnecessary comment, but anyway, I need to choose what to wear for Christmas. Betty probably won't be satisfied unless it's some fancy brand name. But I wouldn't know a high-end dress if it hit me in the face. I decided to consult John about what to wear while updating him on other things. "I don't have anything to wear for Christmas. What should I do?" "Mom, don't you have some dresses?" Reminded by John, I remembered. Indeed, there are a few dresses that I inherited from my mother. "Mom's dresses are beautiful and will suit you. They'd be perfect for Christmas, I think." "You're right. I'll try wearing one after such a long time. Thank you." "I'll be able to come home for Christmas Eve, too. Looking forward to seeing you, Mom, and Betty." Hearing John's voice after a long time made me very happy. Then I took out several dresses from my dresser at home to choose one appropriate for New Year's greetings. This one is the most elegant and calm. There was one dress that was different in both craftsmanship and design. This was something very special that my mother had given me just before she passed away. She said it was a gift from someone before she married my father. It was a dress filled with memories, and I had kept it in the closet for years, wondering if it was okay for me to wear it. But this time, I think it's all right. Now I just need to bring a suitable gift. Since Betty and her family like alcohol, I decided to bring some sake and fancy brand tableware. It's only a few times a year we meet. It should be okay to do this much. Even after such a rude comment, it might be foolish to still believe there's a chance to get along. But I still want to build a good relationship with my daughter-in-law. If it doesn't work out, then that's that. And so Christmas arrived. I put on the glamorous dress and went to Betty's parents' house. I was supposed to meet John there, but it seems he hasn't arrived yet. There's no point in waiting at the entrance, so I'll go in first. Betty's family's home was like the large mansions you see in TV dramas. The grand building, like a hotel, was filled with many people. All the beautifully dressed individuals must be Betty's relatives and business associates. In the ballroom, there was a woman whose outfit stood out from the rest. It was Betty, wearing a pitch-black dress and jewel-encrusted accessories. It's not really suitable for Christmas, but it seems no one around her minds. She was talking with a few associates when she saw me. She approached with a puzzled look on her face. "Betty, Merry Christmas. This is a little souvenir." "Come here for a sec." Betty, without listening to my greeting, grabbed my arm and started walking. I couldn't keep up with what was happening. She took me to another room. We entered a quiet room. It was a very spacious room. Why has Betty brought me here? What's going on all of a sudden? "Didn't I tell you not to come dressed like that?" Betty crossed her arms and stood in front of me as she closed the door, her tone dripping with contempt. She snatched the souvenir from my shocked hands, tore off the wrapping paper, opened the lid, and then burst into an exaggerated laugh at the sight of the dishware inside. "What's with this dishware? It's so tacky." "Betty, you like alcohol, right? It's a brand name at least." "Karen, you really have no taste, do you? This dishware, that dress? What's with that ragged, cheap thing?" To affluent Betty, it seemed everything I wore looked impoverished. She pinched my dress as if it was something filthy. She took the glass from the gift I brought and poured the beer she was holding into it. "If you don't want to go home, could you please come back in different clothes? I'll compensate you." Then Betty tossed the beer from the glass at me. "What are you doing?" "Why are you mad? It's just a cheap thing anyway. So it doesn't matter if it gets dirty. Hurry up and buy some new clothes. 5,000 should be enough, right?" Betty laughed loudly, clearly amused. I couldn't hold back anymore. This dress wasn't just any piece of clothing. It was akin to a keepsake left behind by my late mother. To see it so carelessly tarnished just because it was cheap looking. "You've done something terrible." "What? I told you I'd pay for it." She was blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to hit her. What comes next is going to be a mess. "This dress cost me $50,000, just so you know." "Excuse me? Planning on billing me with some inflated fairy tale?" "Every stitch, every ornament, custom made by a high-end boutique. You like it, don't you? Or can't you tell the difference?" I was surprisingly calm as I retorted. At first, Betty laughed off the $50,000 claim, but my firm stance eventually got to her. "That's a lie, right? This drab, poor-looking dress couldn't possibly." "Shall I bring the designer label from home for you?" The truth is, the dress was a luxury item. That's why I felt guilty receiving it from my mother, and it took courage to wear it. Unbeknownst to them, they not only scorned it, but dared to tarnish it. You're picky about luxury and brands, but lack the eye for it. "I'm not familiar with dresses." "And that matters how. But it's all right. You'll compensate me, right? The exact same item for the same price? That's what you said, wasn't it?" A smile spread across my face, and Betty's complexion went pale. Simultaneously, the room's door swung open. "Hey, isn't that Betty? What are you doing in here? Everyone's been looking for you." The man who appeared was about my age, and I recognized his face and appearance. Hearing her name, Betty ran to him relieved. "Gramps, what are you doing here?" "Well, couldn't spot you, so I was searching. What's going on?" The man was smiling kindly, yet there was an unmistakable authority about him. Betty felt it too. Her reply was vague. "Well, what I was doing, The glass in Betty's hand and my damp attire told a tale that was easy to guess. The gentleman pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket and gently patted my wet dress dry.
My apologies for my granddaughter's behavior. I know an excellent stain remover, Karen.
Thank you. You two know each other? Betty exclaimed in surprise.
Karen was a classmate of mine in college. We're still in touch. You must know her, right? She's a famous screenwriter. She wrote that drama series that's been all the rage lately.
Betty's grandfather responded cheerfully. That's right, I'm a screenwriter. It seemed to be a very surprising fact to Betty.
Huh? That's the first I've heard of it.
I never told you. I make a living writing stories. I hadn't told Betty about working from home because I didn't want my pen name to get out. And I didn't want my work to be belittled by a woman who looked down on working. If I said I was earning money by writing scripts, I knew it would be scoffed at as not a real job. I didn't like revealing the truth this way.
Karen was the bright and kind college Madonna. This dress is what I gave her when she won an award for her script at a public submission.
But this dress was handed down from Mom.
I knew you'd be too modest to accept it directly. It would also be rude to insist on giving it to a married woman, so I told your mom to pass it on when the time was right.
That was a truth I didn't know myself. This dress wasn't a keepsake from my mother, but a gift from the chairman to me. I had won the award after getting married, so maybe he hesitated to give it to me directly. Perhaps my mother had also missed the opportunity to tell me she received it from him. But to think that Betty is your granddaughter, I never imagined.
We haven't seen each other for many decades, so it's natural not to know. And now Betty has gone and done something unforgivable.
Betty was sternly glared at by her grandfather and was nervous.
Karen, may I deal with my granddaughter's punishment? You've come all this way for the Christmas party. Please enjoy yourself, even if it's just for a little while.
He had Betty leave the room and arranged a new dress for me. He said he would remove the stains from the soiled dress and return it later. I gratefully accepted his offer. After changing, I returned to the ballroom, and John had arrived. There was much I wanted to discuss, but the head speech was about to start, so I decided to explain the commotion with Betty later. When Betty's grandfather entered the ballroom, the lively venue fell silent for a moment, and then was filled with a big round of applause.
Thank you all for gathering here today. I have something I want to share with all of you.
The sudden announcement caused a stir in the venue. Betty and I, and even the relatives like John, seemed not to know and were surprised.
Our company plans to open a branch in the countryside to further expand our business. Therefore, I intend to have Betty, my granddaughter, and a member of the board, take charge as the head of the branch. Please watch over her with a warm eye.
The venue buzzed even more. Betty seemed to be hearing about the business expansion and her being the head for the first time. She was sweating and looked shocked. Being the head of a branch may be a promotion for Betty, but in reality, it was more like a demotion. After all, how could she, who has only lived in the city, get by in the countryside? She wouldn't get her hands on the trendy brands as quickly in the city, and so no doubt it would be stressful. Betty looked at her grandfather with eyes brimming with tears, but he just stared back at her unflinchingly. She could feel the unspoken pressure from him to
get serious about your age and work hard to hone your management skills in the countryside.
The atmosphere of the celebration was entirely joyful, yet Betty seemed so shaken she could hardly stand. Since that day, Betty has been rapidly assigned to work in a regional office without a moment to rest. I was apologized to multiple times about the stained dress, but even if it was family, rude behavior needs to be met with a firm response. In the end, at her grandfather's insistence, Betty agreed to compensate for it.
Karen, I'm truly sorry about what happened. I'll make sure Betty learns her lesson from this.
No, it's fine. Just standing up for me was enough.
Betty's behavior has been a problem for a while. Her extravagant spending and that attitude have been a headache even for us. This might be a good chance to knock some sense into her.
Betty's grandfather said this with a chuckle. Betty is now working hard locally as the head of a regional branch, learning the ropes of management. Chased by unfamiliar tasks and overwhelmed with busyness, she has no time to splurge on designer brands or play around. A punishment that seems immense for someone who lived for luxury. There's another pitiful thing. John returned to California after finishing his studies abroad. But John was set to return to a university hospital in New York, so he and Betty just missed each other. Once again, they started a life apart. However, since that incident, John's heart has been drifting away from Betty.
I knew Betty was naive, but I never thought she was that kind of person. Depending on what she does next, I'm even considering divorce.
John seems to be considering a divorce depending on Betty's behavior going forward. Despite their vows to spend a lifetime together, it's Betty who has led to their marriage crumbling. Her unpleasant nature is unlikely to be wiped away just by working at the branch office, so a divorce seems inevitable. But it's John's life, and it's up to him to decide. I received heartening words from Betty's grandfather, saying that even if we're no longer family, I should not hesitate to ask for help if needed. It's surprising how much a classmate I met by chance has helped. Maybe it was the stress that brought us together. Since then, I've been living a peaceful, everyday life. Other than occasionally checking on John, I'm dedicated to writing scripts. Betty's grandfather has been a fan since my early days and is eagerly waiting for my next script. He suggested I incorporate this incident into my new work, but I politely declined because it doesn't suit my style. To be honest, I don't want to remember Betty's image, even in a fictional world.
Help me, sis. My niece, Jenny, was about to burst into tears as she handed me something. It was just a picture of my brother, her father, with his colleagues at a bar. What's wrong, Jenny? Why the sudden distress? What are you two doing over there? As I was about to ask, my stern-faced sister-in-law interrupted us. I've been looking for you, Jenny. Come with me, she said, swiftly whisking Jenny away. Left alone, I casually flipped over the picture. To my surprise, on the back was a message from my brother. If anything happens to me, please protect my daughter. My name is Alice. I'm a 32-year-old working in the office of the construction company my family runs. My brother, 10 years my senior, was always hardworking and bore the weight of expectations as the heir to our family business. Everyone, including me, assumed he would take over the company. However, since he finished high school, disagreements with our father over management policies began to increase. My brother, it seemed, wasn't really interested in taking over the company, often saying, "I love being a carpenter, but that doesn't mean I want to inherit the business." I remember him repeating this like a mantra. Then he announced, "I've met someone I want to marry," and introduced us to a woman. Her name was Maggie. She had an outgoing personality and quickly bonded with our family, but she never lived with us. "I'm going to get married and leave this house." "Wait, aren't you going to take over the business, bro? You know I don't get along with Dad, right? I don't want to cause you any trouble." With those words, he gently stroked my head. True to his word, he married a few days later and left the house. Nevertheless, he always kept in touch with me and we chatted about trivial things. Maggie's dinner was delicious today. She's a dietitian, so she always prepares meals considering my high blood pressure. Yeah, I've heard that story a million times. You never get tired of bragging, do you? As long as my brother was happy, that was all that mattered to me. Then, a few years after his marriage, Jenny was born. From then on, we started seeing my brother and his wife occasionally. They seemed blissfully happy, and Jenny was growing up healthily, loved by both parents. Around the time Jenny turned 10, there were talks within the family of mending ties with my brother. We all hoped to recreate the times when the family used to laugh together. However, that wish was not to be fulfilled. One day while I was at work, I received a rare call from my sister-in-law. While it wasn't unusual to get calls from my brother, it was strange to hear from her. Worried, I immediately picked up the phone. "Hello, sister-in-law?" "Oh, Alice." "What's up? It's rare to get a call from you." "Calm down and listen. Your brother, Jake, he fell from scaffolding at work and was taken to the hospital. He slipped because of the rain." The news was so sudden. I felt as if time had stopped. My mind went blank. Immediately, I called my parents, who were also at work, and we hurried to the hospital in the pouring rain. When we were led into the hospital room, we saw my brother, his skin pale. From the moment I saw him, the reality of the phone call hit me, and I collapsed onto the floor. "Bro?" The voice I managed to squeak out was so feeble that I startled myself, and a wave of sorrow washed over me. At the bedside, my brother's wife was bawling unabashedly, like the heroine of a tragic tale. Her wailing was so intense that it made me hold back my tears and just stare at her, but I felt a strange unease about her behavior. Then Jenny, standing next to her, was looking down, her face pale, not shedding a tear but trembling as if she were terrified of something. "Jenny, are you okay?" It seemed like the shock of her father's death had made her unable to respond to my question. After the wake for my brother at our home, as the relatives were lost in their grief, I found myself quietly shedding tears in a deserted corner of the porch. The photo in the memorial portrait seemed to be a recent one. My brother looked a little worn out, but his expression was peaceful. I wonder if my brother lived a happy life. As I thought about this, an image of Jenny came to my mind. The last time we talked, my brother, who loved his daughter dearly, happily told me about how often he took her to amusement parks and zoos. Jenny must be struggling after losing her father. Thinking about my niece's feelings, I felt tears well up again, but then I heard a familiar voice calling out to me. "Sis." It was Jenny, her eyes brimming with tears. "Jenny, what's wrong?" I wiped my tears and asked her, trying to keep my composure. "Sis, help me. I think I might be next." "Eh?" As I was about to ask her to repeat what she had said, she handed me something while biting her lip. "Dad said if anything happens, I want you to give this to Alice." My brother said that? It was a brown envelope. It seemed a little worn, probably because she had been holding on to it for a while. "It's actually—" Just then, I heard a cold voice behind me saying, "What are you doing?" I was startled and turned around to see my brother's wife, Maggie, with a stern look on her face. "I've been looking for you." "Mama!" Maggie grabbed Jenny's arm and, before I could stop her, quickly whisked her away. Maggie had always been very friendly and kind, but she was behaving very differently now. It's natural given her husband just passed away, but Jenny's behavior was also a bit strange. Left behind, when I looked at what was inside the envelope, it was an ordinary photograph. It looked like it could have been taken at a social gathering. In it, my brother was smiling alongside several of his work colleagues. I decided to flip the photo over. On the back it read, "If anything happens to me, I want you to protect my daughter," in my brother's slightly angular handwriting. I was taken aback, speechless and just staring in surprise. I think Jenny was asking for help. This photo might be related. I decided to call a friend who was a police officer and arranged to meet him the next day. Normally, the funeral would have been conducted the day after the wake, but the crematorium was not available due to a certain day of the week, so we had a day off. This extra day allowed me to uncover the truth behind my brother's death. The next morning when I arrived at our meeting place, He was already there, waiting for me. "Sorry for calling you out of the blue." "Hey, don't worry about it. I was off duty. So what's up?" "Well, it's just that..." I began to tell my friend the sequence of events, and he listened seriously. From a cop's perspective, we can't act on this with just the evidence we have." "I see. I'm sorry I can't be of more help, but remember, I'm always here to lend an ear if you need it." "Yeah, thanks. Just talking about it helps me sort things out." Even after parting ways with my friend, I was still pondering over the photo that Jenny had handed me. No matter how many times I looked at it, the meaning of this photo and my brother's message remained a mystery. What else can I do to find a clue I don't understand from this message alone? I might learn something if I ask Jenny directly, but I feel like my sister-in-law might interfere again. Just then, an idea popped into my head. Maybe I can find something if I look at my brother's belongings. Unable to stay still, I quickly went to my sister-in-law's house. "I'm sorry for bothering you when you're busy. I'm just worried about you and Jenny. Thank you for coming all the way. Jenny is in her room, but let's leave her be for now. She's feeling down since her father passed away." As she said that, she invited me into the living room. She was always tidy and the house was always well kept, but today it felt rather bleak. Oh, there's nothing of my brother's here, and the family photo that was here the last time I visited. There was nothing to suggest that my brother had been here. Desperate to find anything left behind by my brother, I scanned the room. Maggie brought me some tea and homemade pickles. What caught my eye was a light purple bracelet like a rosary on Maggie's wrist. It didn't seem to match her or my brother's taste, and I felt a sense of discomfort as I thanked her for the tea and tasted the pickles. "Wow, it's so salty. These pickles are really salty, aren't they?" I quickly gulped down my tea to wash down the extreme saltiness of the pickles, but Maggie just tilted her head, saying, "Really? I don't think so." Maggie, a dietitian, made delicious meals that my brother looked forward to so much that he would rush home from work. It was clearly strange for something she made. Could it be that she was feeding my hypertensive brother this salty food? Since I arrived at Maggie's house, I've been feeling an indescribable discomfort. I began to worry about Jenny. I'd like to talk to Jenny. She's in her room, right? Just as I stood up and was about to head towards Jenny's room. "No, I won't let you see her." "What? Why?" "I'm sorry, but you should leave. I'm busy preparing for the funeral." Maggie grabbed my wrist, pushed me out into the hallway, and threw me out of the house. Despite visiting the house, I was unable to find any clues. As I looked up at the sky, wondering what to do, Jenny poked her head out of a second-floor window. She put her index finger to her lips in a quiet gesture and threw something at me. It was a small key, wrapped in a cute memo paper. "The key to the shed. Hide it under the potted plant after you use it," the note read. When I silently showed a thumbs up to Jenny, she silently nodded and gently closed the window. I went to the backyard to avoid my sister-in-law and used the key I received to open the shed. Inside, it was packed with my brother's belongings. Among them, I found a diary. Jake was a diligent person and had been recording his daily events in a diary since he lived at home. There was something unbelievable written in there. The seasoning of the food had become heavy, and even when he pointed it out, she said, "Leave it to me, I'm a dietitian." And he couldn't get her to take it seriously. His health had been declining recently. Furthermore, the reason why Jake left that photo was also recorded. I'll never forgive this. The next day, many people, including relatives and Jake's colleagues, gathered at the funeral. When Maggie took the microphone to give the bereavement address, I stood up and stopped her. "I have something I want you all to hear." "Oh, Alice? What's wrong?" Ignoring Maggie, who was surprised by my sudden action, I stepped out in front of the family. Jake's death wasn't an accident. The hall was in an uproar at my words, and Maggie had a very stern look on her face. "What are you talking about? My husband slipped off the scaffold at work and fell." I showed everyone Jake's diary. "Everything is written here. My sister-in-law, who is usually good at cooking, started making heavily seasoned dishes, and Jake's health started to deteriorate. It's strange, isn't it, Maggie, to not only serve salty pickles and soup to Jake, who has high blood pressure, every day, but also to insist that he eat everything without leaving any?" "I don't know anything about that. I was careful with his meals every day." Ignoring Maggie, who seemed to be playing innocent, I pulled out another piece of evidence. "This is a photo that Jake left for me. At first, I didn't know what it meant, but when I visited your house yesterday, I understood. The person in this photo is wearing a bracelet that matches the light purple bead bracelet you are wearing." As I pointed to a certain person, everyone's gaze was instantly drawn there. "Mr. Johnson, you and Maggie were having an affair, weren't you? Even though you were a colleague whom Jake trusted the most, why did you do such a thing?" As the hall began to stir, Maggie glared at me with a stern expression, and the man looked pale and nervous. Mr. Johnson was a familiar face to me as well. He had been a good friend of Jake's since Jake graduated from high school and started working, and he had visited our house many times. His wrist, wiping the sweat from his forehead, revealed the same bracelet as Maggie's. I'm sure Jake was struggling a lot, knowing that the colleague he trusted was his wife's affair partner, and that he might even be targeted for his life. That's why he couldn't tell me directly, and leaving this photo was all he could do. As I spoke to Mr. Johnson, choking back tears, he broke down crying and held his head. "What? A diary and a bracelet can't be evidence of an affair or killing my husband." Maggie started to get defensive. But I was prepared for that, so I continued with the diary. "There's more evidence. Jake checked your phone, Maggie, and saw your emails with him. It seems it was written, 'Jake is in the way for us to be together. Let's get rid of him somehow.'" "That's a lie." "Is it a lie? We can easily find out by investigating, right? At first, it seems you thought of taking advantage of my brother's high blood pressure to kill him through his meals, but that would take too long. So, driven by your desire to get married as soon as possible, you approached Mr. Johnson to eliminate my brother in a workplace accident, didn't you? You planned to push him from a high place on a rainy day, and if anyone asked, you'd just say he slipped." "I never said that. He's the one who suggested it." Maggie began to point at Mr. Johnson, trying to shift the blame onto him. The man shook his head frantically, denying it. "Mr. Johnson, it was raining on the day my brother died, wasn't it?" Mr. Johnson gave a small nod. "Normally, work would be stopped on a rainy day, so why wasn't it?" "It was just a drizzle and we had a deadline, so he suggested we should continue with the work, so I thought it was an opportunity." "My brother thought of you as his best friend and trusted you until the end, you know?" The moment someone gulped, he bowed deeply towards Jenny, Jake's only daughter. "I was led astray by her and I did something terrible. I'm truly sorry." As Mr. Johnson continued to apologize while crying, Jenny looked at him with sad eyes. Maggie was still shouting, "I don't know anything about it. I'm not guilty." Even at this point, "You'll submit the incriminating emails to the police, right?" When Mr. Johnson offered his phone, it seemed she finally gave up. Then a police officer friend who had come to my brother's funeral arrested the two of them and took them away. It was a relief to see them finally apprehended. After that, Maggie and Mr. Johnson received long prison sentences. Thanks to the lawyer I hired, Jenny was able to receive $100,000 from a system called Victims' Compensation Program, which is designed to help the bereaved families of victims recover a peaceful life as soon as possible. Jenny was in shock from the incident and lost her spirits for a while, but I adopted her as my child and she has started to show more smiles. I decided to pour a lot of love into this child in place of my brother.
I've kept him in this house for 10 years. He's so ungrateful. My mother-in-law openly hostile, believing my husband's lies. My husband himself has changed from the man I once loved into a selfish monster. Is this his true nature? At this point, I don't even care. Enough! Who's the ungrateful one here? Good luck dealing with your bad attitude. My name is Clara, a 37-year-old working at a local bakery. I've been with my husband Albert since high school. His family has a long line of carpenters, and he joined the family business right after graduating. We got married at 24, and we're just an ordinary, happy couple. That all changed when we were 27.
Clara, the hospital just called. Please come quickly.
A frantic call from my usually composed mother-in-law at work. I rushed to the hospital and found my husband staring blankly ahead. He looked defeated, and my mother-in-law sobbing beside him. Clara, I can't move my legs anymore. At that moment, he broke down crying. I realized our lives would never be the same. Apparently, my husband went to the grocery store to buy drinks during his lunch break. My husband was waiting at a traffic light when a car hit him. His spine was damaged, paralyzing him from the waist down. After a long hospital stay, my husband came home, a completely different person compared to before the accident. We were living in a rental apartment, but then my usually quiet and craftsman-like father-in-law said, "You should live with us." And before my husband returned, he made his home accessible for us. We were financially unstable, so we gratefully accepted. "I'm home." He entered the house in a wheelchair, his voice devoid of energy. He used to be cheerful, loud, and always cracking jokes. Now, he was like a stranger. "Clara, is Travis doing well?"
"Daddy, does he hurt?"
Our 2-year-old son, Travis, was worried. Travis loves spending time with his dad, especially going down the slide at the park. Whenever his dad has a day off, they head to the park and slide until Travis gets tired. Seeing his dad after a long time, Travis couldn't contain his excitement. He tugged at his dad's hand as if to say, "Let's go play over there." But his dad looked sad. Before the accident, he would have easily stood up, put Travis on his shoulders, and spun around. Now he can't do that for Travis ever again. His dad is still recovering both physically and emotionally. Just then, mother-in-law shouted, "Travis, your dad can't walk anymore. Go away." My mother-in-law suddenly yelled at Travis. Travis, only 2 years old, couldn't understand and burst into tears. Mother-in-law looked annoyed. Mother-in-law is noisy about such a son. I was looking at him with a face that said something like that. Mother-in-law has been more irritable. She's probably struggling to accept the situation. "Travis, big boys don't cry. Come on, let's play with Grandpa," father-in-law said, lifting Travis up. Travis smiled instantly. Father-in-law is usually quiet around us, but he adores his grandson Travis. For a moment, I saw a smile on father-in-law's face. During my husband's hospital stay, I was summoned by my in-laws. "So, Clara, what are you planning to do? You're not thinking of leaving Albert, are you?" Mother-in-law asked, a bit agitated. Father-in-law signaled her to stop. I wondered, do they think that I'm heartless? Their words stung a little. My feelings for my husband haven't changed, and Travis loves his dad too. We'll get through this as a family. Thank you for your concern. I plan to stay by my husband, I assured them. They seemed grateful. I've read many books to prepare myself, but I've come to realize that good intentions alone aren't enough. Since coming home, my husband has become quite demanding. "That's not it. Come on, get it right," he'd snap, increasingly frustrated. He even threw a book at me once. "You don't understand how I feel." A phrase I've heard too many times. Seeing his changed behavior, Travis started saying,
"Daddy is scary."
My son started saying things like that. However, in front of the helpers and friends who've come to visit him, he is a bright husband like before. "Well, I guess I'll just take it easy from now on," he'd joke, and I felt a sense of nostalgia. "Hey, Clara, come here." When my husband calls me in that urgent tone, it's usually about his bathroom needs. I was busy feeding Travis and couldn't leave. "I'm sorry, mother-in-law, I can't step away right now. Could you please help Albert?" Even if I say something like that, it'll be awkward for him if I go, right? I'll take over making dinner for Travis. That's what she said, but my mother-in-law hardly took care of my husband. She seemed to chat with him while I was at work, but that was about it. Seeing this, my father-in-law sighed. I'll go. Clara, sorry for always troubling you. He's gruff, but father-in-law is kind. He's also very proactive about helping my husband. When my husband first came home, he'd ask me, "What are you doing right now? What book is that?" He even helped me study. My mother-in-law didn't like that. Clara, why don't you quit your job? Albert is in such a condition you should support him properly. That's what she said. I knew what mother-in-law was getting at. Basically, when father-in-law and I are at work, stay-at-home mother-in-law has to take care of my husband, and she doesn't like it. Even though we mostly have a caregiver for that now. He's her own son. What's her deal? Plus, Travis is going to grow up. My husband can't work properly anymore, but we still need money. So, mother-in-law, could you please help out more? Father-in-law is helping me study, you know? We're family. Mother-in-law sighed at me. Don't you dare make a move on my husband. She glared at me. What? Is she insane? My husband is still selfish, and mother-in-law says ridiculous things. I've thought about taking Travis and leaving many times. But my parents are taking care of my elderly grandmother at home. I couldn't think of going back there, and I didn't have the courage to live alone with my son. Clara, you've aged. Time flies, and it's been 10 years since my husband had his accident. I'm still working at the bakery. I'm now 37, and Travis is in 6th grade. These past 10 years, my mind has been filled with concerns for my husband and child. No wonder I've aged. Hey, how rude. We're still in our 30s, you know. Sorry. Maybe my husband has come to accept his condition after 10 years. He's started talking to me cheerfully again. While I'm at work, father-in-law, who's now retired, looks after him. As for mother-in-law, she's uncooperative as ever. And lately, for some reason, she's started ignoring me. But I can't think of why she'd treat me like this. Recently, my husband found a new hobby. He started playing basketball at a nearby gym with people in similar situations about 3 times a month. It seems to be a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful to the friend who introduced him to it. Travis, you want to come too? Basketball is fun. When I tried to talk to our son Travis, he brushed me off saying, I'm more into baseball, you know. Our relationship had grown distant. Travis, who once adored his dad, now saw him mostly as an angry figure. My husband didn't think he was the problem. Isn't he a bit young to be in his rebellious phase? He'd joke, leaving me with no choice but to sigh. Out of the blue, I got a call from my mom back home. Hello, Mom, it's been a while. What? My elderly grandmother had passed away. She had been suffering from dementia and had been in a care facility for years. She caught a cold, which turned into pneumonia. I was told she looked peaceful when she passed, surrounded by family. That gave me some comfort. Only Travis and I attended the funeral. My parents live in the next town over, a good drive away. My husband stayed with his parents, so Travis and I took the opportunity to visit my family home. Seeing my parents again, they had aged significantly. Well, I guess I've aged too, I thought. How's Albert doing? Are you getting along with his parents? My mom asked, looking concerned. I felt like crying just looking at her. Meanwhile, Travis was happily playing video games with his cousins. I hadn't seen him smile like that in a long time. Well, his dad's fine, his mom not so much, I said, forcing a smile. My parents reassured me. You can always come back home. Knowing I had a place to return to made me feel stronger. Coming back from a quick grocery run, I find my son standing in front of my husband's room. What are you up to? I'm about to ask, but he puts his finger to his lips, signaling me to be quiet. Inside, I hear my mother-in-law's angry voice and my husband trying to calm her down. I know eavesdropping is wrong, but I can't help but listen, and what I hear is shocking.
Hey, Clara, when are you getting back home? Get back here now.
A few days later, my husband calls, clearly frustrated that my son and I haven't returned. After overhearing that conversation between my husband and his mom, we left his parents' house immediately. We went straight back to my parents' house. When I told them what happened, they welcomed us with open arms, though visibly concerned. I'm not going back there. I'm a burden, right? I'll give you the divorce you want. My husband snaps.
What are you talking about? Just come back. We need to talk.
He hangs up abruptly. My parents, who were listening nearby, look worried. My dad stands up and says,
Let's go.
We leave my son Travis with relatives and head back to my in-laws' house. Travis, sensing the tension, tells me, "Mom, don't back down." I'm touched by his courage. They better be ready for me. We're back! Hearing this, my irate mother-in-law storms out to greet us. What's the meaning of this? Oh, Clara's parents. What brings you here today? I sense her irritation despite her polite tone.
We're here to discuss Clara and Albert's divorce,
my dad says, visibly angry. In the living room, my husband is sitting in a wheelchair, clearly surprised by my parents' sudden appearance. He glares at me as if to say, "How dare you bring your parents?" He always does this when he's unhappy, just glares at me. His mom does the same. Lately, he's been staring at me like he's watching me, wondering what he doesn't like. They're like two peas in a pod.
Do you always glare at Clara like that?
My mom asks, also angry. In this tense atmosphere, only my father-in-law remains calm.
A few days ago, the police came to our house. They said we were mistreating our daughter-in-law. They left after a brief talk. Do you know anything about this, Clara?
Yes, I was the one who called the police, I reply calmly. Upon hearing this, my husband and mother-in-law explode in anger. See, it's all her fault. She's crazy. You should divorce her. If anyone's crazy, it's you two. My husband is nodding in agreement next to me. But father-in-law is different.
Clara, there must be a reason. Speak up.
He says this in a gentle voice. A few days ago, I came back here. Albert and the others didn't seem to notice, but what I heard was so horrifying. I realized I can't live with them anymore. Father-in-law wasn't home at the time. He looked puzzled, but these two are different. Their faces have turned pale. Do they recognize themselves? What are you talking about? Are you okay? My husband looked at me with a smug face, probably thinking I have no evidence. But my son Travis was quite vigilant. Do you want to see a video? Travis recorded this. I play a video. In it, my husband claims that I've been having an affair for years. After that, I'm plotting to take over the house. He says he's told me multiple times he wants a divorce so he can remarry someone he met through basketball. Mother-in-law is furious after hearing this. Divorce her immediately. She's even flirting with your father. I won't forgive her this time. But mother-in-law wants to keep Travis as the heir. The balcony on the second floor. The floor is old, about to give way. Can't we use that to get rid of Clara? Mother-in-law grins as she says this. That's going too far. But if she gets injured, maybe she'll understand how I feel. That's what they said. The video ends and I quietly put away my phone. Of course, I've never had an affair, and this is the first I've heard that my husband has met someone through basketball. I felt my life was in danger, so I reported to the police. That's all there is to it. But the police only said they'd listen to my story. My husband and mother-in-law are silent, their faces pale. Father-in-law looks angrier than ever. What is this? Are you both idiots? I thought I was the fool. Thank you, father-in-law, for always being there. I genuinely felt that way. Despite all this, mother-in-law starts talking nonsense about how parents should let their children be with the ones they truly love. Realizing that staying here would be pointless, my son and I start to pack up to leave. Can you believe her? After letting her stay in our home for 10 years, she's so ungrateful. My mother-in-law glared at me as she usually did and said that. In response, my dad said, I've heard a lot about you from my daughter, but this is the first time I've talked to someone and been so uncomfortable. In response, my dad calmly said, my mother-in-law kept muttering, but wouldn't stop bad-mouthing me. Fed up, I finally snapped, enough! Who's the ungrateful one here? Good luck with your miserable life, you nasty woman. I left their house with my parents. After that, my husband and I got divorced. Some people who didn't know the full story called me a heartless wife, but I told the truth to my close friends. Word seemed to spread among my ex-husband's friends, and now hardly anyone visits him. I don't know if that's the reason, but after a while, my ex-husband and his mother started reaching out. I never picked up the phone. When they realized I wasn't answering, they started sending a barrage of messages, all strangely pleading for reconciliation. Funny enough, all the messages were about wanting to get back together. Didn't he say he found someone better? Reading his words like, I took you for granted. Now that you're gone, I realize your worth. I thought, realizing it now? Too little, too late. I told my ex-husband, if you keep contacting me unnecessarily, I'll go to the police. And after that, the messages stopped cold. I moved back to my parents' home in the next town over and opened a bakery in a nearby vacant shop. The only employees are me and my parents. My son Travis helps out with cleaning the shop now and then. Travis started middle school this spring and seems to have made a lot of new friends. He's also fully committed to his baseball club activities. Though the bakery was just a hobby at first, thankfully it's gaining a good reputation and we're getting more new customers lately. Welcome. Oh, it's you, father-in-law. My former father-in-law visits the shop a few times a month to buy bread. From what I heard, his son's feelings were one-sided. He was so persistent that he even got banned from playing basketball, which he used to enjoy. Honestly, serves him right. My former father-in-law had said he'd take care of his son. I don't care about you. Do as you please. But he coldly told my former mother-in-law. That seemed to have shaken her, and now she's actively taking care of her son, which made me chuckle. There are some financial worries, but with my parents' support, we're managing. I'm home. Oh, Grandpa's here. Play catch with me.
You've grown again, haven't you, Travis? Your grandpa used to be the ace of his middle school baseball team. Bring it on.
Watching their heartwarming conversation, I strongly vowed to make the most of my new life together with my precious family.
You're 35 and way too old. Let's get a divorce. If you round up, you're basically 40. I'm cutting ties with you as a parent. Just leave.
Could there be anyone else who gets yelled at like this by their husband and son? Especially on their birthday? It seems they no longer consider me as family. But this might be a blessing in disguise. I've been waiting for the perfect moment to get back at them. My name is Darcy, and I'm 34. I live with my 25-year-old husband Sam and our 19-year-old son. I gave birth to Jeff when I was just 16, a single mother. I worked hard to raise him and met my current husband in my late 20s. I'm truly grateful to Sam for accepting me and my child. Because of their close ages, my husband and son are more like buddies than father and son. Even before we got married, Jeff was attached to Sam, which was fine. But as time went on, the way they treated me started to change for the worse. One day, while I was cleaning, I found Jeff lying on the floor. Hey Jeff, I'm about to vacuum. Can you move? What? Just do it when I'm not here. What's with that attitude? Weren't you supposed to go for a part-time job interview today? I felt lazy, so I skipped it. What? We agreed you'd earn your own allowance. I just gave you $300 the other day. If you're a parent, don't be stingy over $300. Listen to this recording on my phone. You clearly said you'd earn your own money. Shut up, old lady. Stop nagging. When I played the recording, Jeff angrily lashed out. Lately, I've been recording their words because we often argue about who said what. Thankfully, I had this recording. After high school, Jeff neither got a job nor did anything productive. He just lazed around at home. He'd say he's going for a part-time job interview, but would either not show up or quit after a few days. Moreover, his attitude towards me worsened daily. A few years ago, Sam started calling me old, and Jeff picked up on it. While I was still in shock from Jeff's behavior, Sam came downstairs looking grumpy. What's all this noise? You woke me up. Sam, please say something to Jeff. He skipped his job interview again. Oh, is that all? I'm trying to sleep in on my day off. Let me be. What do you mean? Is that all? You've been getting angry a lot lately. Is it menopause? What? It's normal to get mad at a son who does nothing all day. Whoa, scary. Women do get cranky with age. Watch out, Jeff. Laughing at his dad's words, Jeff said, Too funny. How can they belittle their wife, their mother, to this extent? What on earth did I ever do to you two? Seeing that I wouldn't fight back, my husband and son kept hurling insults at me. Their close bond made them team up and mock me. Lately, they'd intentionally avoid eating the meals I prepared, or wouldn't come home until late at night. Sometimes my husband would even come home smelling of perfume. Can we really call this a family? I've started to wonder. Yet I remember the pain of giving birth to my son, and the man who accepted us and married me. So I tried to keep my reactions neutral. A few months later, I felt a bit brighter that day because it was my 35th birthday. They might have forgotten, but I didn't care. I decided to treat myself and bought a cake and some appetizers after work. When I got home, surprisingly, both my husband and son were there to greet me. Why are you two here?
What are you talking about, Darcy? It's your birthday, right? Yeah, it's your birthday, so we came home early.
You remembered my birthday?
Of course, we're a family, aren't we? Just sit down, Mom. We've got everything ready.
I'm so happy. Thank you both. Honestly, I was deeply touched. For years, they didn't even remember my birthday. So knowing they cared enough to celebrate was heartwarming. 30 minutes later, my husband and son set the appetizers on plates and put candles on the cake. With big smiles, they said,
"Happy birthday, Darcy." "Happy birthday, Mom."
"Thank you both so much."
"We know it's been tough. Thanks for everything."
"Thanks, Mom." "Wait, thanks? Why past tense? I feel like this is a strange way to celebrate." Ignoring my confusion, Jeff urged,
"Come on, blow out the candles."
After I did, they both stood up clapping.
"Done. Good job." "Man, that took forever. Finally free from the old lady."
"Wait, what's going on?"
"Jeff, she still doesn't get it." "Come on, Dad, you tell her. I can't stop laughing."
What did I do? I just blew out the candles. They then dropped a bombshell.
"We're done with you. You served your purpose. Finally, we're free." "Oh, that's right."
"What are you talking about?"
"Don't you get it? We don't need a 35-year-old. We're divorcing." "Round it up, and you're 40. We're cutting ties. Just leave."
My husband pulled out divorce papers from his bag and slammed them in front of me.
"Here, I prepared everything."
"Sam, are you serious about this divorce?"
"Obviously. Who'd want to be with an old lady like you?"
"Old lady?"
"Isn't it obvious? You're 10 years older than me. I don't want to take care of someone like that."
"But when we got married, I asked you. I have a child and I'm 10 years older. Are you sure about this?"
"You were still in your late 20s then, and you were pretty."
"But everyone ages." He sighed and mocked.
"You think you're so special. Be grateful we even stayed with you past 30.
Jeff added,
"Exactly. Did you ever think we needed you?"
"But I'm your real mother."
"Gross. Stop acting all high and mighty. You had me at 16. You're just an old crazy person. We really don't care about you. Just leave."
In that moment, the fragile love I felt for my family shattered. So I'm no longer a part of this family. They've prepared the divorce papers, and even my son has rejected me. Then there's no need for me to endure this any longer. With determination, I signed the divorce papers in front of my husband and son. "Is this what you wanted?"
"Wow, you made up your mind quickly. Giving up on us, huh? Feeling sorry for yourself now that we've dumped you?"
I looked down at them and said, "Given up? Dumped? No, I'm the one leaving you."
"What are you talking about?" "Stop playing dumb, Jeff. She's just being bitter."
"Enjoy your carefree life while you can. It won't last long." I grabbed the signed divorce papers and packed my things to leave. That night, I stayed in a cheap hotel, and the next day, I visited a lawyer's office I had in mind. Of course, to get back at my husband and son. A few weeks later, as expected, my husband called. "Hello?"
"Darcy, what the hell is this?"
"What are you talking about?"
"Don't play dumb. I just got this certified mail."
"If you received it, then just follow the instructions."
"You've got to be kidding. Why am I being asked to pay compensation for the divorce?"
"Why? Because you cheated." Yes, Sam had been having an affair. I had suspicions when he started coming home smelling of perfume. I even suspected he introduced his mistress to our son. I had hired a detective to gather evidence and was prepared for a divorce.
You knew about her?
Of course, I found out by accident.
Why didn't you say anything? Now you're demanding compensation after the divorce.
Why? Because I thought of you as family. I was devastated when I found out about the affair. I even thought of divorcing you right away, but I endured it because we were family. Tears welled up as I spoke my truth. I went to see a lawyer, vowing that I would no longer have any regrets about my husband, and I would sever ties with my son. I had hoped he might apologize and admit his mistakes, but that hope was shattered with this call.
So you still have feelings for me? I'll forget about the divorce if you drop the compensation claim.
You're serious? After all the insults in the affair? Not even an apology?
Why should I apologize?
Excuse me?
It's your fault for getting old. I did nothing wrong. It's all on you for aging.
Fine, I'll see you soon with my lawyer. I hung up and headed to my former home with my lawyer. Upon arrival, they greeted me with smug smiles.
Long time no see. How does it feel to be kicked out by your loving husband and son? You've aged a bit since we last saw you. Can't believe you're my mom. Dad's girlfriend is way hotter.
Same old with you two.
What do you want? If it's about the compensation, we're not paying. Get out. Just seeing you annoys me.
All right then. Please proceed, lawyer. Prompted, my lawyer began to explain on my behalf.
All right, Sam. We're demanding $20,000 in compensation for the divorce due to your affair. I already told you, I'm not paying. Additionally, we're asking for $10,000 for the emotional distress Darcy suffered from your verbal abuse. That's a total of $30,000. Wait, $30,000?
My husband was visibly shaken by the amount. Sweating, he appealed to the lawyer.
Wait a minute, this is ridiculous. I never verbally abused her. We have evidence, you know. What? Darcy has been recording your conversations just in case.
I initially did it to avoid he said, she said arguments. I never thought it would come to this. Nodding in agreement, the lawyer continued.
You have a very smart wife. She's gathered so much evidence, even unintentionally. This can't be. Just so you know, all the evidence Darcy has is valid. We've backed it up, so trying to take it from her and erase it won't work. That's all from me. Darcy, shall we go?
As we were about to leave, my husband shouted.
Wait.
What?
Please, Darcy, I can't afford $30,000.
That's not my problem. You brought this on yourself, remember? You're the one who handed me the divorce papers.
But I never thought it would come to this.
I exploded in anger. What are you saying now? After all the times you insulted me and called me old, now you want to back out of the divorce? You're too convenient.
But that was just a joke.
I have no intention of getting back with you. I'll make sure you pay the compensation for the divorce. I feel so relieved to be divorcing you. Go to hell, jerk. My husband's face turned pale, and he was speechless. Seeing this, my son hesitantly approached me.
Mom, wait, What? Well, if Dad pays the compensation, he won't have any money left.
What's your point?
You'll still give me an allowance, right? Like the usual $500 a month?
I couldn't help but laugh at his audacity.
What's so funny?
Why would I give you an allowance?
But you're my mom, and I'm still a minor.
Oh, didn't you know?
What?
The law changed in April. Adulthood starts at 18 now. So, you know what that means?
That means...
You're 19, an adult. I have no obligation to support you. Get a job, you lazy bum.
Mom!
I'm not your mom anymore. Just like you abandoned me, I'm abandoning you. I won't help you no matter what. You and your low-life father can sink together.
Wait, Mom!
Ignoring my ex-son's cries, I left with my lawyer. Soon after our divorce was finalized, my ex-husband apparently went into debt to pay me the compensation. He quickly remarried his mistress, but it turned out she had borrowed thousands from loan sharks under his name. She's now missing, and he's hiding from the debt collectors. Instead, he was arrested for black money and is now living in hiding. As for my ex-son, he got a part-time job at a grocery store, but was fired quickly due to his laziness. He's now often seen spending nights in parks. It's ironic how similar they are, even though they're not blood-related. Some might say it's irresponsible to abandon one's child, but I don't regret my decision. I have feelings too. I'm not a robot. I refuse to dedicate my life to such people after enduring so much. From now on, I'll cherish myself and live a life I can be proud of.
What is this? Only for Taylor? How could she be so cruel? With a loud slam on the table, father-in-law, his face red with anger, yelled at me. The table was adorned with lavish dishes. Yet, right in front of my mother-in-law was just a single cup of instant noodles. Until a moment ago, she had stared at it in disbelief. Now, she covered her face, appearing as if she was breaking down in tears. But I saw it. Underneath her hand, she had a sly grin. Seeing father-in-law on her side, she probably thought the situation was turning in her favor. But it wasn't going to be that easy. This instant noodle was just the beginning of our revenge. My name is Eva. I've been married to Robbie for 5 years. We had a first daughter last year, and now I'm a stay-at-home mom. We started living with my in-laws right after our daughter was born. Back then, we lived in company housing, but Robbie was transferred by his company. The new location was near Robbie's childhood home. Hearing this, Robbie's parents were thrilled and began preparations for us to move in. They renovated their aging home, even preparing a room for the baby. It was hard to say no after all that. Sorry, Eva. Mom got a bit too excited. Yeah, after all they've done, it's hard to refuse. But you're at home during the day, right? Just you and Mom. Won't it be uncomfortable? The renovation was their idea, but they made a room for Jenna, and they said they'd help with her. That's a big help. Robbie seemed unsure till the end, but we eventually decided to live with his parents. However, living with the in-laws wasn't easy, especially my mother-in-law, who seemed to have hope for a grandson. She seemed to resent me for having a girl. She constantly made snide remarks about my housework and parenting. The worst was her comments about my cooking. What's with this plant food, Eva? It looks bad. Have you been feeding Robbie this? Well, Robbie said he liked it. Oh, Robbie's just being polite. I can't eat this. Clean it up. You're not eating it? No. I don't like food made by someone like you. And she'd leave the food untouched. No matter how I adjusted the seasoning, she'd taste a bit and say, still not good. Eva, is your taste off? Serving this to your mother-in-law? Even fast food or instant noodles are better. And she'd leave it. Lately, she'd bring home burgers and fries and eat them ostentatiously next to my dishes. It was clear she had no intention of eating my food. If she wasn't going to eat it, why should I prepare her portion? The day I left her spot empty, she was even worse. Why is there no food for me? She shrieked. Well, you always say you don't like my cooking and eat something else. So I thought, unbelievable. Just because I eat something different, you treat me like this? This is too much. She covered her face, sobbing dramatically. Wait, please. It's just that you always... So you're saying it's my fault? She's acting like a tantrum-throwing child. My daughter, who was already at the table, sensed the tense atmosphere and began to cry. This is a mess. Quickly prepared a meal for my mother-in-law and placed it in front of her, who was still complaining. I can't believe this. What on earth were you thinking? I wanted to say those words were mine, but I held back. I felt it was pointless to confront her directly. That night, I discussed my mother-in-law's behavior with my husband, Robbie. Both Robbie and father-in-law leave early for work and return late, so they're unaware of the weekday meals. But Mom did that? But she's not like that on weekends. She doesn't complain on weekends, probably because you and father-in-law are around, I said. Robbie looked puzzled. I understood his disbelief. No one wants to think their mother would treat their wife that way. I had hoped that by keeping quiet, things would stay calm. But today's outburst was the last straw. And now, her snide remarks were not just directed at me, but also at her daughter. If I was cleaning, she'd follow me around saying, "Eva, you're so careless. It's a shame for the house after the renovation." When I showered with my daughter, she'd scold from the dressing room, "Don't be so loud. It's unladylike for a girl to be noisy. Who did she get that from?" When she told my daughter, "Jenna is cute, but it would have been better if you were a boy," I was horrified. I could handle her comments about me, but I feared my daughter would be her next target. When I thought about it, I couldn't stand still. Tears in my eyes, I told Robbie everything. He seemed concerned and said, "Okay, I'll talk to Mom." Those words made me breathe a sigh of relief. I hoped that, as her son, he could make her reflect on her behavior. Once you calm down, you will realize that you are doing something outrageous. After feeling relieved, I suddenly felt doubt rising inside me. But a doubt crept in. Would she really reflect? After all, she told a small child with a smile that it would have been better if she were a boy. Then, maybe Mom will. "Eva, are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. Can you help?" "Yeah." I was against living together from the start. As Robbie spoke, I took out my phone and started searching. "Eva! There's laundry piling up. Are you just trying to get Robbie on your side and neglecting the housework?" As expected, Robbie's warning had no effect. With Robbie and father-in-law around, she acted even kinder. But when they weren't, she was even harsher. Hearing her shrill voice, Jenna, who had just fallen asleep, began to cry. Even hearing the crying, my mother-in-law just frowned, showing no guilt. "So noisy for a girl. It's because you always coddle her, Eva. Don't speak ill of Jenna." "I'm not. I'm just saying it would have been cuter if she were a boy." "You're overreacting." She smirked and approached the crib. "Don't waste Robbie's money on these gadgets. Girls grow up fine without them," she said, knocking over the baby monitor. Fell, narrowly missing Jenna's face. As I rushed to check on Jenna, my mother-in-law laughed. "Oh, and next week is Dad's birthday. Are you prepared? We're inviting his colleagues, so don't embarrass us. Though, your cooking is worse than instant noodles." She laughed loudly and left the living room. Holding my daughter, I could only comfort her. "It's okay. Don't cry. It was scary. I won't forgive her. I'll get my revenge." Side, however, a burning desire for revenge against my mother-in-law raged. A few days later, as she had mentioned, father-in-law's birthday arrived. In their family, they had a tradition of hosting a small home party for father-in-law's birthday every year. This year, upon hearing about it, father-in-law's subordinate said, "Please let us celebrate too," and was invited. Of course, the usual relatives would also attend. It's easy for father-in-law to just invite people, but I wish he'd consider the one who has to prepare everything. I had to clean and tidy up the living room, which would be the party venue. and prepare meals for over 10 people. Of course, there was no chance my mother-in-law would help. She just stood behind me giving orders without lifting a finger. Even when Robbie offered to help, saying, "Mom, Eva, should I help with something?" She dismissed him, saying, "Oh, no, Robbie, you don't have to do anything." And then add, "Eva is so good at winning Robbie over, making him do housework. Aren't you ashamed as a wife?" As the relatives and father-in-law subordinates began to arrive, she quickly left the kitchen. I overheard her boasting, "Isn't our house lovely? It's always clean." I can hear people saying things like, "No, that's not true. I just clean my house properly." I'm the one who cleans it. With anger boiling inside, I continued preparing the food. And a few minutes later, all the guests had arrived and were seated, waiting for the food. My mother-in-law, of course, took the seat next to father-in-law, chatting away as if the food would magically appear. When I entered the living room with the dishes, there was a chorus of admiration. "It looks delicious! So stylish!" My mother-in-law, ever the opportunist, said, "Right? Well, I made the two." I silently set the dishes on the table. I placed the main dishes in the center and side dishes in front of each guest. And finally, I placed an instant ramen in front of my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law's eyes, covered in makeup, blinked repeatedly. She blinked in disbelief, looking between me and the instant ramen. "Eva, please enjoy," I said. "What's the meaning of—" The lively atmosphere was instantly silenced. The relatives and father-in-law subordinates sensed the tension. "What's going on here?" Father-in-law was the first to shout. "Eva, serving Taylor instant ramen? Explain yourself!" Slammed his fist on the table, but I didn't flinch. She always said my cooking was worse than instant ramen, so I served her just that. She'd never say that. "How dare you treat your mother-in-law this way?" No matter how loudly he shouted, I remained calm. Father-in-law, now frustrated, pointed at Robbie. "Robbie, this is because of your poor upbringing. Get rid of that awful woman now." But Robbie coldly replied, "Fine, then I'll cut ties with you all." "What? What do you mean?" "If you can still say kick Eva out after seeing this, then it's Mom who should be kicked out." Robbie showed father-in-law his phone. On the screen was my mother-in-law, laughing as she knocked over the baby monitor. From the phone speaker, her recorded voice echoed, "Your cooking is trash. Even instant ramen is better." My mother-in-law's face, which had been downcast as if she were the victim, visibly paled upon hearing the recording. She must have thought father-in-law would side with her and help her navigate the situation. But that wasn't the case. Robbie played multiple recordings from the baby monitor, showcasing her numerous hurtful words and actions. Initially, she tried to avoid eye contact, but soon realized everyone's gaze was fixed on her. In desperation, she lunged for Robbie's phone, losing her balance and face planting into one of the dishes I had prepared. It's a fabrication! Eva's lies!" she screamed, her face smeared with makeup and sauce. But her voice was unmistakably the same as the one coming from the phone. All the guests looked at the mother-in-law with disdain, as there was no way to escape the situation. The guests looked at her with disdain, and father-in-law was in shock. "Taylor, it's not true. It's not." No matter how much she protested, no one defended her. Robbie stood up and came to my side. "We're leaving this house," he declared, and we left the living room. We could still hear her incomprehensible screams, but we never looked back. Soon after, we left their house with our pre-packed bags. Everything that happened was a plan Robbie and I had devised. When Robbie learned of her harassment, he had consulted father-in-law, who refused to acknowledge his wife's behavior. We feared that without undeniable evidence, we'd be forced to continue living with them. So, Robbie devised a plan to expose her in a way she couldn't deny. The baby monitor and enduring her verbal abuse were all part of it. After moving to our new home, father-in-law reached out to apologize. He apparently divorced her after the incident. In front of his relatives and subordinates, his wife's disgusting behavior was revealed, and father-in-law even made a comment to cover it up. Robbie thought that they would have lost face if they didn't get a divorce. We don't know how she's managing now. But she tried to approach Robbie at his workplace, not knowing our new address. She was reported as a suspicious person and taken by the police. Father-in-law said that she should forgive him because she had thrown out her mother-in-law. But she said, "What are you going to do?" For me, it was the time when I consulted her about Eva. So to be honest, I think we can just ignore it like this. I don't mean right away. That's right. I'll let him remind me for a while. And so, we haven't been in touch for a while now. Maybe in the future, we'll let him see our child. For now, we want to enjoy our time as family of 3. Robbie admitted that he had been too focused on work since the transfer and hadn't been there for Jenna and me. Since moving, he's been taking days off to spend with us. We're looking forward to a peaceful life together in our new environment.
When someone passes away, they live on in the memories of those left behind by living honorable lives and by raising Lucia and Chloe, who carry Lane's genes. We pay the greatest tribute to the departed. That's what Mom told me. Yeah, thank you. I'll do my best. Even though Chloe and Lucia are just in middle school, to have lost Lane, the person who helped me recover was Mom, who lives with me. It might sound like Mom is this calm and wise person, but hey, what's this bitter paste? Mom, you're making weird health foods again. I grated the entire clementine, skin and all. The skin has nutrients, so eat it all up. What? Try it yourself. Chloe, fix your bed hair. Never mind that. Eat this, Chloe. Your bed hair is cute. Our typically noisy mornings are happening again today in this home. My name is Caitlin. I'm 44 years old. I lost my husband Lane, who was 2 years my senior, 2 years ago. A health checkup revealed a disease, and things went downhill fast after that. Mom, who was already living with me, saved me from my grief. Her comforting words soaked into me, perhaps because she had already lost Dad. Thanks to her, I have been able to recover this quickly. Mom moved in after Dad passed away. Lane had suggested that she live with us, saying it would be lonely to live alone. Since the kids were grown, we had a good system. Mom handled the housework. I worked part-time and Lane was a full-time employee. Everything was going well until then. Losing Lane suddenly was unimaginable. He was a kind and sincere husband. I had no complaints about him, but there was an issue. It was a concern I had even before Lane passed away. And after his passing, that concern grew even larger. The root of the problem is Lane's sister Neva. Neva is a home economics teacher. Her husband is an older social studies teacher and they have a daughter and a son. What a perfect family! But the competition from this perfect sister was incredibly intense.
I love my job as a teacher. It gives my life purpose, but you're just a part-timer. You'll never know the joy of a fulfilling career. Relying on Lane for income, huh? And your mother handles the housework? I can't even begin to relate to your situation. I'm juggling with both work and family perfectly.
Those condescending words stung, but they were directed at me, so I took it. Yet it didn't stop at me. When I grow up, I want to work at Hasbro because I like Sparky, my child declared. The next time we saw Neva and her family, her kid chimed in, I want to work at Disney. Walt Disney was... Neva cut in, Disney is a much bigger company than Hasbro, you know. When my mom sewed a beautiful outfit for my child's graduation, Neva retorted, my kids wear gymboree. We're all about the brand. You can't even afford that, can you? Homemade? That's laughable. Brand name quality is a different league. Every chance she got, Neva made it a competition, and today she took it to the max. How about you move out of this town? She texted via WhatsApp. I couldn't believe my eyes. Why is your mother living in my younger brother's inherited house? We need to talk about this. I'll come over. What? Trembling, I showed the message to my mom, and there was more. I'm on my lunch break now, so it will have to be after my overtime. Unlike part-timers, I have extra hours, she texted. For now, I tried to think calmly about how to handle Neva's unexpected gripes. Why should we move? We can't just... Don't worry, my mom interrupted. If you're this stressed, maybe you're low on vitamin C? Try some grated clementines. Not the time for clementines, Mom. Struggling to put aside the clementine discussion, I spent 4 agonizing hours thinking before Neva arrived. What to do? I can't come up with a good idea. I couldn't think of anything other than I don't want to move. Meanwhile, my mom was busy filling a storage container with a new clementine pasta recipe. She wasn't even thinking about the situation. If I don't do something, we're in trouble. I was sweating buckets, unaware at the time that my mom's hand was subtly trembling with anger. I would later find out that. But for now, Neva arrived just before 8 p.m. So here's the thing, Neva began as she sat at the table. My mom is getting weaker, so she can't live alone anymore. We're thinking of moving her in with us, so we're going to close out both my mom's apartment and our own place and move here. Look, my younger brother's passing is the reason my mom got weak in the first place. Isn't it all caused by things that happen in your family? My mom gave birth to my younger brother who left this inheritance behind. Legally or not, doesn't human decency suggest that this house should go to my mom? It's odd, isn't it? It's strange enough that you're living off my younger brother's inheritance, but it's even stranger that your mother lives here too. I am talking about what's morally right. What? Add my biological mom to our family and not look for a new home? Why should we give up our home? Is it our fault that your mom is getting weak? Living in my husband's family home goes against human decency. That's some logic. As I was dumbfounded by Neva's bizarre reasoning, I heard a voice say, "What kind of reasoning is that?" Turning around, there stood my mom, defiantly holding a bowl overflowing with clementine pasta. She slammed the bowl down on the table between me and Neva. Maybe you're not getting enough vitamin C in that crazy head of yours, my mom declared, thrusting a spoon into the mound. The pile of clementine pasta collapsed, splattering onto the table. Neva let out a small gasp. The tension was anything but normal, and I reflexively tried to stop my mom. Mom, but she wouldn't be silenced. I have been wanting to say this for a while. You keep saying awful things to my daughter. And what was that about in the WhatsApp messages today? I have been on the verge of exploding since you got here. Mother... So what if you are a teacher? The one who fell for our daughter and proposed in the first place was your younger brother. Mother... If you're going to keep calling her a part-timer, then go say it directly to your younger brother's grave. Criticizing his lack of judgment. Mom, would you just shut up for a moment? I have something to say. My words directed intermittently at Mom were interrupted as soon as they left my lips. Mom just wouldn't stop talking. I get it. Your mother-in-law got sick because she lost her son. I have sympathy for her. When my husband passed away, I was devastated too. But why are you asking my daughter to move out of the home she cherishes? If my presence is the issue, I'll move into your house instead. Then you will have two people, one being your younger brother's mother-in-law to take care of. You would get even more attention that way, wouldn't you? And hey, why not invite Mariko from down the street? She's not getting along with her daughter-in-law either. We could all live in your house. Who the heck is Mariko? Both Neva and I are stunned by the mention of a name we have never heard before. And aren't you just high on your perfect shelf? You pretend to be all about your job, but you have been neglecting your family. Take a look at your kid's latest school report. She's been absent a lot. I bet you don't even know because you leave for work before she heads to middle school. Your older daughter isn't even attending middle school, let alone any tutoring centers. I have seen her coming out of the arcade downtown. When I asked her about lunch money, she said she takes it from your wallet. How can you say you're responsible at work when you can't even keep track of your own wallet? I'm shocked that Neva's daughter isn't attending middle school, a fact I wasn't aware of. But even more shocking is that Neva, her mother, didn't know. Even more unbelievable is that Mom knows all this. However, my surprise is likely dwarfed by Neva's own disbelief. Neva seems lost for words. Kids don't have to go to middle school, you know. It's just one part of society. Maybe she would have been happier at another school. She even opened up about why she stopped going. Have you ever listened to what your children have to say? Neva turns bright red. It's written all over her face. Why does she have to listen to this condescending woman? And with that look, she blurts out what everyone was thinking.
I haven't. But do you really have to point that out? I thought she was doing fine because she didn't say anything. So let me ask you, do you think you could do better if you were in my shoes? Balancing work and spending the little time I have at home with my children? I heard from my younger brother that you just sew in your spare time.
Oh, I probably couldn't. Mom easily admits she couldn't do what Neva does. Neva visibly recoils, taken aback by the straightforward response. I tried my best to create an environment at home where we could talk about anything. In return, she opened up to me. You, on the other hand, are so obsessed with keeping up appearances. You made her say she wanted to work at Disney, a place she doesn't even want to be at. You even made her memorize quotes from the founder. You know why she refused to go to school? Because she thought if things keep going like this, I'll end up at a worse high school than Chloe. What did you say when you saw her test scores? She's going to a middle school with a lower rank than Chloe. Are you trying to shame me? Then you muttered something like, I can't rely on her anymore. If she's going to lose, I have to find a way to get them out of the neighborhood before high school entrance exams. I got it now. I heard both sides, yours and hers, and I'm convinced your daughter isn't your accessory. She's trying to live up to your expectations. But all you see are the grades. You don't offer advice or say, I'm here watching over you. All you care about is your image. She reached her limit. She can't see a future no matter how hard she tries. What's worse, she has a parent willing to harm other families just because she can't achieve. Do you think there's a middle school student who wouldn't break under those conditions? That's why she couldn't go to middle school or the tutoring center anymore. I felt like crying too. Her kid is just too pitiable. But Neva always had too much pride.
You really are a nag using information about my child's refusal to go to school to threaten me? Who do you think you are?
Then, taking a deep breath, my sister-in-law screamed,
You old bat!
Ding dong! Ah, a visitor! In this tense atmosphere, I let out a goofy voice. It's not just a visitor. Come on in. Mom picks up a spoon, still dipped in the clementine pasta, then eats a bitter spoonful herself. She looks like an artisan deep in thought, pipe in mouth. Meanwhile, I head to the front door. I open it. Good evening. What? Standing at the entrance is Neva's husband. Neva is a bit older than me, and her husband had a receding hairline.
Your mother invited me. May I come in?
Sure. Still not understanding the situation, I led Neva's husband into the living room. Sorry about this, I borrowed your phone book and called him for the 4 hours until this woman arrived. I was worried about what you would do, Mom says, brushing aside the matter of the phone book. Well, then, Mom directs me to take a seat and offers the chair next to her to Neva's husband. Once seated, she takes control again. Say what you just told me, but here and now, she demands of Neva. Neva is at a loss for words. Fine, I'll say it for you. Listen up. Your wife called me an old bat. Neva's husband is left slack-jawed, and understandably so. Suddenly summoned here and told just this line, anyone would be confused. I decided to explain on her behalf. It all started with a question. Why is your mother also living in this house that was the inheritance of my younger brother? Neva had stormed in and shouted, "It's ridiculous that you're living here. I want to bring my mom here, so please leave." During the conversation, she looked down on me because I work part-time. She also pushed her unrealistic expectations onto her own child, causing the child to stop attending school. Realizing her child wasn't meeting her expectation, she schemed to kick us out. That's what led to this eviction drama. I explained all of this succinctly. Neva's husband listened and nodded. After hearing everything he said,
Neva, first of all, you said you wanted to move, but I didn't know you meant this house. Why didn't you tell me? The idea of kicking everyone out to move in is absurd. And as a social studies teacher, I have to say,
his tone hardened.
Old age is a testament to knowledge and experience. It's unacceptable to belittle that with disrespectful words.
He continued,
How many people have you sacrificed and looked down upon to maintain your own pride? You have looked down on my sister-in-law who's a part-timer while boasting about your own job. Our daughter is so stressed out she can't even go to middle school anymore. Our house is a mess because you don't do any housework. But I thought it was my responsibility since I chose to marry you. That ends today. You have been too full of yourself.
Finally, he deeply apologized to us.
As a husband, it's my last role to apologize on behalf of my wife. I'm sorry, and thank you for telling us about our daughter.
I heard Neva sobbing in the background. My mom then said to Neva, "The clothes you are wearing now, they're from Gymboree, right? I used to sue for Gymboree. I never knew Mom worked for a major apparel brand like Gymboree. I found out for the first time too. The clothes she said were specially made were actually made by Mom. No wonder the clothes Mom made were always so durable and beautiful." In the end, Neva and brother-in-law got divorced. Brother-in-law took custody of their 2 kids. After taking custody, he moved, and Neva left her middle school teaching job, now uncomfortable in the small community where her false facade had been peeled away. As for me, I continue to live a joyful life every day with my energetic mom and my cheeky 2 daughters. Mom, what are you up to now? I'm making a bitter melon pasta. Stop, please. Thank you, Mom. You will always be a hero to me and my daughter.
She's pregnant. Divorce me. My world goes dark at my husband's outrageous words. He hands me divorce papers and a meager settlement, then coldly kicks me out. I have nowhere to go, barely holding back tears. But then, right after, a life-changing phone call comes in. My name is Evelyn. I'm 30 years old. I've been married to Samuel for 2 years. By all accounts, I should be living the newlywed dream. But my current reality is far from happy. It all started when Samuel brought up the idea of living with his parents before we got married.
Hey, Evelyn, how about we live with my parents?
We've never talked about that before.
Look, I travel a lot for work. I worry about leaving you alone.
Samuel, you're overreacting. I'm an adult, you know.
I don't want anything to happen to you. My mom's at home, and since you're working too, she could help out around the house. It could be easier for you.
Well, maybe, but despite my reservations, Samuel kept repeating that he was worried about Evelyn. Foolishly, I took his words to heart, thinking he really cared for me. As a result, I reluctantly agreed to move in with his parents. The day after we officially tied the knot, all the moving was done, and once things settled down, I took a moment to give my mother-in-law a proper greeting. Mother-in-law, thank you for having me from today. I look forward to being part of the family. Mother-in-law glares at me and sighs, Yeah. Would you like some coffee? No need. Instead, why don't you go unpack? It's annoying to have all those boxes lying around. Oh, you're right. Sorry about that. I'll get right on it. Ugh, do I have to tell you to do everything? What kind of upbringing did you have? From day one of moving in, I received harsh words from my mother-in-law. Not wanting to upset her, I quickly began to unpack. Anxiety swirled in my head. She seemed really mad. We're going to be living together, so I really want to get along if possible. But despite how I feel, my mother-in-law's snide remarks just keep escalating. Before heading to work, I prepare breakfast and set the table. Since my husband and father-in-law leave the house early, I inevitably end up eating with mother-in-law. She takes a bite of the pancake and shouts, "What is this? Evelyn, what on earth is wrong with these pancakes?" Didn't they suit your taste? Suit my taste? They're horrendous. You expect me to eat this? I did taste test multiple times, and it seemed fine to me. That just means your taste is off. Remake them, now. Her unreasonable demands often made me nearly late for work. Living with her was pushing me to my limits. One day, as I was checking my phone between chores, mother-in-law began berating me in front of my husband. Evelyn, what are you doing? Mother-in-law, I just finished hanging laundry, so I was taking a break. A break, you say? Who do you think you are? I'm sorry, but I finished all the household chores. Don't talk back. Wives don't have the luxury of breaks. Find something to do and keep working. Got it? But... No buts. If you get it, go clean the staircase, you failure of a wife. Failure of a wife? I was just taking a short break. Why does she have to go this far? That was the moment it clicked with me, and I decided to talk to my husband that night. Samuel, you saw mother-in-law scolding me today, right? Huh? Was something going on? You were in the living room. She called me a failure of a wife just because I took a little break. My husband sighed deeply and opened his mouth. Look, if my mom said that, you must have really messed up. It means you're falling short, Evelyn. What are you saying, Samuel? I'm also disappointed in you. What? I thought you'd be a better wife, but as my mom said, you lack awareness. Be more responsible. What? Lack awareness as a wife? What does that even mean? I'm doing all the housework, even though the premise of moving in was that mother-in-law would help out. I also have a job. Why do I have to endure this much? From that day on, my husband turned a blind eye. No matter how much mother-in-law bad-mouthed me or even threw things at me, he ignored it. He was already often away on business trips and started spending even less time at home. Thoughts of divorce popped into my head daily, but I had a reason to hang on. It was because of my father-in-law. He was the only one who stood by me. Mother-in-law usually didn't harass me in front of father-in-law, but sometimes our paths did cross. Evelyn, is the front entrance clean yet? Yes, right away. After that, you have to weed the garden. I told you just yesterday. I'm sorry. It started raining yesterday. You're just slow. That's the issue. Useless. You neglect housework because you're always working. I'm sorry. Just as I apologized, my father-in-law's voice rang out. What's going on here? You. What have you been saying to Evelyn? Well, she's slow, so, you're having her do all this for you, and then you talk to her like that? But she really is slow. The garden is still full of weeds, and even the food doesn't taste good, and there's not enough of it. Weren't you the one who never touched the garden before we all moved in? And don't you always bring home ready-made meals? If you're going to complain, at least be able to do it yourself. Fine. Whatever. Whenever my father-in-law confronts her with these truths, my mother-in-law retreats to her room. Each time he apologizes to me sincerely. Evelyn, I'm really sorry about my wife's behavior. No, it's okay. Thank you, father-in-law. If anything else happens, let me know. Don't hesitate. Yes, thank you. My father-in-law, who has a strong sense of justice, always stands up for me and scolds mother-in-law. Whenever he's not around, the harassment from her continues. But I've been able to manage, thanks to him. I lost my parents at a young age, so I have no one to turn to, even if I get divorced now. For someone like me, the presence of my father-in-law has been monumental. Then, one day, while at work, I got a call from my mother-in-law. This is odd. Why is she calling me at work? Picking up the phone, I was shocked to hear the news. Your father-in-law has collapsed. Come to the hospital immediately. What? Father-in-law? How? The details don't matter. Your husband Samuel is on a business trip, so you have to come. Yes, understood. I'm on my way. Since my husband had left on a week-long business trip 2 days ago, I had no choice but to go. I explained the situation to my boss and rushed to the hospital. As soon as I arrived, we heard the doctor's explanation. The situation is unclear. He might not regain consciousness. He was fine this morning. We've done what we can. It's up to him now. What? A tense silence followed. Breaking that silence was my mother-in-law. Doctor, are you saying my husband is at risk? That it's just a matter of time before he passes? Whoa, hold on, mother-in-law. What are you talking about? Well, there's a lot to consider, like funeral arrangements and inheritance. We need to plan ahead, don't we? But why bring it up now? Father-in-law is fighting for his life. The doctor's already said there's not much hope. I wonder how much inheritance he's leaving. Mother-in-law! Even after we got home, all my mother-in-law talked about was the inheritance. She'd look at me with this smug grin and say, "You won't be getting a dime." Despite visiting the hospital daily, father-in-law's condition showed no signs of improving. My mother-in-law wouldn't even visit him, and my husband was MIA. All I could do was pray for father-in-law to wake up. A few days later, while getting ready to visit father-in-law in the morning, my husband, who had been on a business trip, finally returned home. Samuel, why didn't you reply to my emails? I stopped mid-sentence because there was a strange woman standing behind him. I had a bad feeling and hesitantly asked, Samuel, who's this woman? I'm sorry, Evelyn. I fell in love with her. I can't be with you anymore. What? I felt as if I'd been hit over the head. Unapologetically, my husband continued. She's pregnant. I want a divorce. What are you saying? Weren't you on a business trip? I was on a trip with her. That's when we found out she's pregnant. You've got to be kidding. Not only was my husband's business trip a complete lie, but he had also gotten another woman pregnant. I felt faint. My vision started to blur. Just then, my mother-in-law rushed over, her eyes shining. Wait, are you really pregnant? What's the baby's gender? We're not sure yet, but it might be a boy. Oh my goodness, a male heir! I'm so happy. Seeing my mother-in-law's excitement, the other woman also chimed in. Thank you, Mom. Oh, calling me Mom. How cute. It was clear why mother-in-law was so ecstatic. She had never approved of me prioritizing my career over having kids. That's why she was welcoming this woman who was carrying what could be her grandchild, even if it was the result of an affair. The two of them continued to celebrate, ignoring my very existence. Then my husband handed me divorce papers. Here, fill this out now. What? I'll give you $1,000 as a settlement for now. After my dad passes, I'll pay you properly from his estate during the divorce proceedings. Now, please leave. You're a burden, and I have no use for a failure of a wife like you. I was more or less forced to sign the divorce papers. Then I was handed a measly $1,000 and kicked out of the house. A surge of fury overwhelmed me in that instant. I've had enough. I don't care anymore. If this means I'm free from my husband and mother-in-law, then that's what I truly want. But where would I go now? My parents are gone, and I can't impose on a friend's hospitality for too long. Just as I was standing there stunned, my mobile phone rang. The caller ID showed the number of the hospital where my father-in-law was admitted. Did something happen to father-in-law? I quickly answered the call. Hello? What? Father-in-law? It was joyous news that father-in-law had regained consciousness. I rushed to the hospital. Upon entering his room, father-in-law looked at me and gave me a warm smile. Hey, Evelyn, you got here fast. Father-in-law! Yeah, sorry to have worried you. I'm just so relieved. What would I have done if you hadn't woken up? I appreciate you caring so much. How's everything at home while I was here? Well, the thing is, I told father-in-law about everything that had happened back at the house, including the fact that I had just been divorced. I poured out my deepest gratitude to him. Thank you for always treating me like your own daughter. You've given me so much to be thankful for. Father-in-law quietly laid his hand on my teary shoulder. Evelyn, this might not be appropriate to ask, but would you consider making me your real father? What? I heard from the hospital staff that you were the only one who came to visit, so when I woke up, I asked them to call only you. Is that so? Seeing their true colors this time made me realize that blood doesn't matter. From now on, I intend to focus only on you, father-in-law. And so I decided to become father-in-law's adoptive child. After that, I started the discharge procedures for father-in-law. Once he was discharged, we both went to ring the doorbell at my in-law's house. When my mother-in-law opened the door, she was shocked to see both father-in-law and me. Father? And why are you here too? At the sound of mother-in-law's voice, my ex-husband appeared from the back of the house. His reaction was even more shocked than my mother-in-law's. Evelyn, what are you doing here with Dad? Hey, Samuel. You said you'd pay me alimony from your dad's inheritance once he passed, right? Well... So your dad is clearly in good health. How are you planning to pay that alimony? Look, I can't right now. Once my dad eventually passes and I get the inheritance, I will pay you, okay? Can we drop it? As he pleaded, breaking into a sweat, I dropped the bomb. Sorry to break it to you, but you're not inheriting anything. What? My ex-husband's face turned pale, his mouth twitching. That's when my father-in-law delivered the final blow. From now on, Evelyn is my only family. I'm giving all my property to her while I'm still alive. This house will be in Evelyn's name, so the two of you need to leave. Now. You can't be serious, Dad. Do you think I'd joke about this? I'm utterly done with you. All you care about is my inheritance. Get out, now! You're both worthless. Father-in-law then forces my ex-husband and his affair partner out of the house and promptly shoves divorce papers in front of mother-in-law. Just like my ex-husband tried to do to me, he somewhat aggressively pushes for her signature. Sign your name here. No way! He was resolute. You forced Evelyn to sign divorce papers, didn't you? Now sign! She let out a tiny shriek, then reluctantly signed the papers. They apparently moved into a one-room apartment with his affair partner. With all their belongings shipped to them COD, their new place must be a mess. As for me, thanks to my father-in-law, I was able to claim alimony in the divorce. We also completed the adoption paperwork, and now we're enjoying peaceful days as if we're a real father and daughter. Dad, it's nice out. How about we grab a basket and head to the park? A splendid idea, Evelyn. Speaking of which, the sandwich filling is tuna salad and roast beef, right? You never eat anything else. Ha ha ha, you got me. Even after decades, she never remembered. Don't look so glum. I'll always be here to support you, Dad. Now my life is the epitome of happiness. I never imagined such days would await me back then. There's only one thing on my mind now. I want my beloved father to stay healthy and live a long life. That's my one and only wish.